All right, joining us now is Joe Kent. He is the former director of the National Counterterrorism Center under the Trump administration. He resigned recently because of the Iran war. He was also special forces, did 11 tours, was a paramilitary officer for the CIA, and unfortunately he lost his first wife, Shannon, in a suicide bombing in Syria as well. Joe, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for being on. All right, Joe, you said that the Iran war is problematic because they were not an imminent threat to us. And now we have significant costs of that war piling up. We have 13 service members killed, 232 service members wounded, 16 aircraft destroyed, up to $1 billion a day spent on the war, gas price over $1 per gallon higher nationwide, and the list goes on and on. So is this already obviously a mistake?
Most certainly, and unfortunately, it's a mistake without a clear exit, because now that we're in it, it's going to be very challenging for us to extricate ourselves. Obviously, there's been an immense cost in human life in terms of American service members. We have the situation that we have in the Straits of Hormuz, where now world energy prices are being affected. We're seeing the effects here, the price at the pump, and unfortunately, in my opinion, the Iranians currently have the upper hand. Maybe not militarily, but in terms of them having leverage. And we have this, and I'm sure we'll get into it, an off-balance relationship with our, air quotes, partner, the Israelis. The Israelis have completely different strategic objectives than we do at this point, but we are still treating them essentially, most charitable definition would be as a partner, but really they're in the lead of the military operation. So I think we're in a very bad situation right now. I pray that it won't get worse. I pray that the rumors of the potential for, committing ground troops in any way, shape, or form is just a negotiating tactic, but I think we need everyone to be very aware of just how high the stakes are.
So Joe, look, people say I go too far when I say this war is 100% because of Israel, but I really can't find an American objective. So you've said already that they were not an imminent threat. Obviously they weren't. Even if they had enriched uranium, it wasn't enriched enough. Even if it was enriched enough, they had no weapons to deliver it here. So that's clear. Their ballistic missiles can't reach us. Their proxy groups are an issue for Israel, but it's not like Hezbollah was attacking Santa Fe. So I literally can't find an American interest. So is this 100% Israel's war?
Yes, I mean, look, the Iranians, we've had our issues with them in the past, and I think President Trump in his first term, he addressed them appropriately. When Iranian proxies killed Americans, President Trump responded rapidly. He killed Qasem Soleimani, he killed Abu Mahdi Mohandas, but then he stopped and he didn't take the bait of getting us sucked into a regime change war, because at a very basic level, President Trump has always understood that getting us sucked into the Middle East is just a recipe for disaster. From there, he used diplomacy. He used economic tools to prevent us from sliding into a war, but also to give us a strategic effect that we needed to kind of keep the Iranians at bay, to get them to the negotiating table. When Trump first came in January of 2025, the Iranians stopped their proxies from continuing to attack us. Under the Biden administration, they attacked us, 100 to 200 times since October 7th. The Iranians understood that President Trump, wasn't someone really that was going to take the same level of attacks as the Biden administration, but also they understood that President Trump did want to get a deal. And now this posed a strategic threat to what the Israelis wanted, and the Israelis wanted regime change in Iran. And basically the series of events that we've seen since then have played right into the Israelis' hands. And look, it's not just, you and I saying that this is Israel's war or we lack a strategic objective. All we continue to hear from the administration, unfortunately, is basically a list of tactical targets that we want to bomb, and lists of things to bomb. That's not actually a strategic objective. And so now we're trying to negotiate, whereas the Israelis continue to aggressively pursue their objectives, which is regime change. And so again, we're at an impasse with our partner, and our partner is saying, we want the war to continue. They're continuing to attempt to kill negotiators. We saw reports today that there may have been an Israeli plot to kill Abbas Arachi. We heard President Trump himself say a few days ago that he can't tell us who he's negotiating with. He's afraid that they'll be killed. killed, and it's pretty obvious who they'd be killed by. So look, at the end of the day, we just have to be honest with ourselves and say that in this war, only the Israelis stand to gain while we pay for it and while we bleed for it, and while it's going to have massive strategic and economic ramifications on American foreign policy, and then all the way back here to the U.S. and to include our allies in the Gulf and in Europe.
So Donald Trump, when talking to allies, said, they asked him, when's the war going to be over? What's our objectives? And he said, I'll know it in my bones. So I guess we're all waiting for Donald Trump's bones to tell us when the war is over, but that doesn't seem like a military objective. And then 3 Republicans came out of a closed-door meeting that was classified and said, oh boy, they were worried that we're going to put in ground troops and that we really had no objectives. So Joe, Israel definitely has an objective. They would love to put Reza Pahlavi as the dictator or Shah or king of Iran, and he's already gone to Israel and pledged his allegiance to Israel, so that's clear. Trump has said a couple of times, no, we can't do that. He has no popular support in the country. So now I'm reading in the press that they're on to plan B, which is create a giant civil war in Iran so that the Iranians are busy fighting each other and they can't fight against Israel and they're defanged and they're defenseless, etc. So I understand Israel's goals and I understand it from their perspective. I think it's a terrible, heinous thing to do, but at least I understand it. For us, I can't even guess at what our goals are. So like, is our goal to destroy every ballistic missile? And how would we know? Every boat that Iran has? And how would we know? We say our objective is not regime change. So if it's not regime change, and we've already incapacitated their entire Air Force and what looks like almost their entire Navy, and we've taken out their nuclear facilities, and we've taken out almost all their ballistic missiles, and we took out the top 49 leaders, what else can we do? Do we have a single identifiable objective for the United States in this war?
No, we don't. And this is why I would really encourage President Trump to basically take everything that you just listed off and declare victory based on everything that you just listed off, and then tell the Israelis, we're done funding this. You can go it on your own, but you need to worry about defending your own country. We're not going to pay for any more offensive operations because that would, mess up us declaring victory, which I think President Trump should declare victory right now. Say, hey, the Iranian Navy's at the bottom of the Persian Gulf. We've taken out X amount of leaders. We've taken out X amount of ballistics. We obliterated their ability to produce a weapon of mass destruction. But in order for any of that to be taken seriously, he has to restrain the Israelis. Step one of any de-escalation, or even step one of declaring any kind of victory, is restraining the Israelis and just being honest with ourselves and recognizing what you just said, that the Israelis have a vastly different strategic objective. It's either to install completely new leadership or really just to continue to kill whoever rises to the top, and if that results in massive amounts of chaos, like you said, with the Iranians, fighting each other, or a massive migration crisis, then so be it. The Israelis have a very different look at what a very different approach to what winning in this scenario looks like. But I think the time is right now for President Trump to say, hey, we accomplished all of our goals. Restrain the Israelis, declare victory, and now let's start talking about how we can get the oil flowing again out of Iran, out of the Straits of Hormuz, and how we can start rebuilding the Gulf.
I'm going to move on to Israel in a minute and talk about how dug in they are to our structures of power in this country and have an honest conversation about it. But before we do that, one more thing at least about the war, which is to the point about declaring victory. Joe, if we went to the Iranians now and said, look, here's our new offer. Our old offer, our current offer, by the way, is get rid of all of your ballistic missiles, something that no country would do, and get rid of all your uranium, even though we're fighting a huge war and you don't want to get rid of the energy program you have for uranium. And we get to control your foreign policy. And now, by the way, Donald Trump has added he gets to control the Strait of Hormuz. So that's fantasy land, right? That's never going to happen. They're not even at the negotiating table. And then you put out these ludicrous demands, right? But if you put that away and we went to them and said, reopen the Strait of Hormuz, cut out the Israelis from the peace deal, let them, if they want to join the peace deal, great, wonderful, we'd love to have it, right? But we're going to do a peace deal with you, Iran. You reopen up the Strait, You stop bombing the Gulf countries that are our allies. You stop bombing our bases. By the way, we then are no longer enemies, okay? And then we'll leave. Where's the downside of that?
Yeah, I would even throw in sanctions relief and helping them reintroduce a lot of their oil to the world market, which would be an economic boom for Iran. Iran has said that they want, they want us to basically pay back all the damage that's been done. I don't think that's very realistic. I don't think we can, even if we wanted to. But what we can do is we can help them reintroduce their oil to the market. This is going to be, I think, a great offer for the Iranians. I think it's going to help bring down oil prices. It would incentivize the Iranians to open up the Straits of Hormuz. And then, like you said, we have a separate peace deal with them. I think a key part of the Iranians taking us seriously at this point is going to have to be us restraining the Israelis. And restraining the Israelis, I think, is politically going to be hard for us to do, because we're going to talk about the Israeli influence. But in terms of military capabilities, if we basically say to the Israelis, we're not going to fund your offense anymore, well, we will defend you if you're attacked, but we're not going to fund, it's a deal breaker if you guys go back on the offense. And then we're going to have to seriously look at how much military aid we give you. We hold the leverage in that equation. We don't act like it, and I think we should, but that's going to be a key component, I think, to showing the Iranians that we're actually serious, is restraining Israel.
Yeah, and of course, the only downside to that is that people would, in America, especially in the media, would cry and cry and cry and say, oh my God, beloved Israel, we can't do this to them. They started a war, and so we have to fight it for them. I find that entirely unpersuasive. Israel's got nothing to do with me. I don't even think they're an ally. But I wanted to ask one more question about the war itself. Why not use Israeli ground troops? They're the ones who wanted this war. 82% of the population wanted it. Their government pushed for it for decade after decade. Why? And Americans have no objectives there, as we just described. Why do we have to use our ground troops? Israel is now using their ground troops to invade Lebanon and take more land for themselves. I hear about how the IDF is legendary all the time. I mean, I see them murdering helpless women and children mainly. But if they're so legendary, why are they going into Iran instead of us?
I think it's just a simple math problem. I mean, Iran is massive and Israel is tiny. They don't have anywhere near enough ground forces to do anything other than maybe a strategic strike, a quick commando style raid in and out that they specialize in. But in terms of actually committing ground troops, as you mentioned, they're pretty tied up right now in Lebanon, Gaza, et cetera. And I think even if they weren't tied up or with their neighbors, again, I just don't know if they would be able to actually muster a large enough force to hold anything substantial inside Iran. This is why Israel needs us on board for this war in particular, in order for them to take down the Iranian regime in terms of just even airlift, the ability to dominate the skies, to conduct a meaningful air campaign, what's taking place in the Persian Gulf, but then ground troops. That's all got to be us. That's why they've needed us for every single step of this.
Yeah, well then maybe they shouldn't start wars. If they don't have the troops to fight them. If they say, oh no, we have to send American troops into a meat grinder for a war we'd like, I got an idea, don't start the war. Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.